You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh, and Gach is always best served live.
And I'm Ari, and Omicron, Alpha, Yellow, Daystar 27.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes Unnatural Selection and A Matter of Honor. So I understand you just finished watching Book of Boba Fett.
I sure did. I don't think a lot of people are watching it. Like, my normal Star Wars friends aren't talking about it because I think they think it's like this separate thing that doesn't like apply to Star Wars.
I think it's probably just because you finished it a couple weeks later than everyone else.
Oh, really? Because nobody on my friends list or anything in my social was talking about it.
Because I saw Twitter talking about it a bunch, and I've been engaging in it. How'd you like it?
Well, I'll be the first to admit that and people have heard me say this, so I'm gonna make some people mad, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. I don't understand why people stan Boba Fett.
Right?
I've never really understood it. He's just some dude that stands there in some armor and doesn't say anything. It gets eaten by a giant pit monster. Like, he's not interesting to me.
He had 5 lines in the original trilogy. I think he had more lines in like a single episode of the Clone Wars as like a little kid. So
yeah, that's what it feels like. I mean, I don't know. It was one of those things that I would look at Star Wars nerds and be like, okay, I don't understand the love for this character. So I'm going to be the first to admit I did not rush to watch Boba Fett as soon as it came out. I'm also not really into like warring family type stuff. Like, it's the one part of Batman I don't really care about. Like, what family is doing what and who's paying who to be whose goon is not interesting to me. And so I wasn't really interested in that aspect either. You know what I was sold on? Fennec Shand. Fennec Shand is the only reason I tuned into the show, and boy, am I glad I tuned into the show. It's so good.
Well, that was my argument going into it. I was like, I don't care about Boba Fett. I'm probably not going to care about Boba Fett after having watched the show. Yeah, I don't care about Boba Fett.
Nope.
Maybe a little bit more.
You don't need to care about Boba Fett. And I actually wondered if the fanboys were going to be mad about that because they were expecting it to be a show about Boba Fett, and it's really not actually about Boba Fett.
Halfway through this series, it just becomes The Mandalorian season 2.5.
It really does. Yes, all of a sudden you're just in the Mando show, like, without really any warning. You're just
There's a 2-episode stretch where Boba has like 1 line of dialogue.
In the Book of Boba Fett. Yeah. It's real weird. And then it continues past 1 episode. I thought it was going to be a 1 episode off thing, but I think there's 8 episodes. Am I right? I think so. 7. So 5 and 6 were these really good Mando episodes, essentially. And then 7 is, I literally was screaming at my TV, and I turned to my husband with like joyful tears in my eyes and said, "This is peak Star Wars."
It was
because it is peak Star Wars. It was so good.
It was a lot of fun. It was some good schlock. And Robert Rodriguez directed that one. So he's definitely got his action chops through the years.
Why do I know that name?
He did the El Mariachi trilogy, so with Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico. He also did the Spy Kids movies, and he's worked with
the Spy Kids
Quentin Tarantino a lot. I think he directed Sin City. So yeah, he's done a lot of things.
Oh, he did Sin City, migraine in a movie for me. I saw that in the theater, and it just something about the black and white and the way it was stylized. Every time I watch it, I get a migraine.
Well, that's not for everyone.
I don't think so. Also, I had a crush on Elijah Wood growing up. I almost said Elijah Clark because I also had a crush on Elijah Clark. He was a kid from youth group. Anyway, I had a crush on Elijah Wood growing up, and I did not after that movie ended.
Yeah, that'll destroy it pretty quick.
But he did a really good job with that episode.
He was so creepy in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant in the movie. I said that episode, but he did a really good job of that movie being creepy, and then it opened us up to other things like Wilfred was really weird and really good. Anyway, we're on a tangent, but
tangent on a tangent.
Yeah, I don't know. I gotta say, like, as a Star Wars fan, I don't think I have been that excited watching Star Wars related media since Here I go. I'm going to make more people even more angry. The Last Jedi. I haven't been that excited about Star Wars since The Last Jedi. That is true.
I will say I sat next to you when we saw Rise of Skywalker together, and I know that there's the initial theater high. Like I was like enjoying it in the moment, but afterwards I thought about it like, man, that movie sucked. So
I think I turned to you when it was over, and I think I said, was that a good movie? I think that's the words that came out of my mouth. Yes, I cried the whole time, but I think I turned to you and said, was that a good movie? Or something like that. And we both kind of looked at each other like, I'm not sure. Because
I enjoyed it at the moment. But
at the moment, I also enjoyed it.
Anyway,
but then I
am really looking forward to Kenobi because that's coming out in a couple months here. And,
I have been looking forward to Kenobi for so long.
I've been waiting for this show for like 10 years. Like I've always wanted to see him come back.
I know they have been saying that Ewan was going to come back as Obi for so long now. It has been this rumor, and I think the rumor made it happen. Like I don't think it was really going to happen if the rumor and us being so excited about it hadn't happened.
I feel bad for Ewan McGregor because like he knew that it was going to happen for like 2 years before they could announce it. So he just had to lie and say, no, sorry, that nothing's happened. I haven't heard anything about it. I don't think it's going to happen. Can you imagine holding that secret?
Him and Andrew Garfield should go on press tours together. Yeah.
Right.
So I just want to talk a little bit about the prequels. I love the prequels. I know I'm one of those people, and I'm out to annoy the fanboys listening to our podcast today. But I love the prequels. I have always loved the prequels. For one thing, they were the first Star Wars I got to see in the theater. And I thought that, and I also had a huge crush on Ewan McGregor. And so between those two things, I really loved them. But I loved the lore building. I loved the ships. I loved the planets. I loved seeing the Republic. I loved seeing all of these things. And so for me, I was willing to forgive a lot of problems with the prequels for that, And so I'm excited to see Kenobi in the hands of some decent writers and some decent directors. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Also, I love me some Anakin Skywalker. I really, really love Anakin. And I'm really interested to see how this plays together. I mean, when I heard Hayden was coming back, I cried. I'm not even going to lie. I think Hayden Christensen is such a good Anakin Skywalker. He's such a whiny, annoying piece of crap. And that's what makes him such a good Anakin Skywalker.
I think it'll be interesting to see him as full Vader in this one. So
I agree, because all we get in the prequels is the no. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Unnatural Selection, which is the 7th episode of the 2nd season. It originally aired on the 30th of January, 1989. It was written by John Mason and Mike Gray and directed by Paul Lynch.
So this episode starts off with Picard going, it feels like the fans don't really like Pulaski. Is there something that I should do about it?
Yeah,
because he call in Troy to his office, and he's just like, I don't know about Pulaski. She seems like she's an unpopular character. Should we give her an episode? And Troy's like, I like her. You should give her a chance.
No, what Deanna said, and was so full of crap when she said it, was, I've never met a more dedicated physician. Okay, that just made me so mad. It says in my notes, you've met Beverly. And I was just like so mad. But then our good friend Amanda, when I posted about this on Facebook, said that she always saw it as like a tongue-in-cheek like insult towards Pulaski, because she's never met a more dedicated physician. And in Beverly's case, not only is she a good physician, she has friends and family and a child and things like that. And so it's not just, she didn't just devote herself to being a physician. And I've decided to accept that as headcanon. Because that way I don't have to be so mad about it either. Okay, so yes, the writers got together and were like, let's give her an episode. And the plot of that episode...
We had we talked a couple episodes back about how you wanted a House MD Star Trek episode, and we kind of get that here.
And look, we got one, yeah.
Yeah, so the Enterprise encounters another Federation ship, the USS Lantry, but like the entire crew has died seemingly from old age.
They're reverse Benjamin buttoning.
And like Riker even is like, the captain of the Lantry is my age, and Riker's like 30. So there's no way they should be dying of old age. So they decide, okay, do not board this ship. There's probably contagion. We'll catch it. So we'll put like an emergency beacon on it. And I'm thinking, blow it up. Like, don't take the risk. Just scuttle the ship. You don't want to.
Yeah, there's nobody on there. What are you saving? Yeah.
But so that they were like, well, they just came from this place that's doing like genetic research, so we better check up on them. And they go, and it turns out all of them are also getting super old and everything. So it's up to Pulaski to find out, why is everyone aging so quickly. It turns out that they are genetically engineering humans.
Human children, they call them.
Human children. Yeah, they called them children, although they all seemed like they were late teens, early 20s. They didn't really look like kids to me. But maybe that was part of the engineering. Maybe they aged quicker.
I think that's what's the implication.
Yeah. And they have to do a whole thing where like they beam up one of the children encased in carbonite or some kind of like plastic sheen or something like that, so that it does they're not there's no chance of the kid possibly infecting them, even though everyone on the thing is like, oh no, the children, they can't carry the disease. Their immune systems are so strong that they're immune to everything.
So then Pulaski steals a shuttle. She doesn't steal one, but they put her on a shuttle.
She comes up with the idea to go on a shuttle, which was a good idea because that was a good way to have a hermetically sealed environment. It's literally a different ship.
With data, very smart, yeah.
Because he can't get infected, although
right.
He did get infected by polywater intoxication, so he's not as immune as everyone thinks.
Oh, I wonder if that was just a mistake, though.
I think that was probably just we want to have Data have fun in that episode, too.
Yeah.
But anyway, she removes him from the casing and starts studying him, but then she starts feeling like rapid onset arthritis, so it's obvious that the kids are carriers, too, and now she's infected. Which means she can't go back to the Enterprise because she'll spread it to everyone else. But she can go down to the planet to investigate everyone else because she's already infected. Might as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they eventually just discover that it was like, it's the kids doing it. Their immune system is so strong that it actually like leaves their body and finds things to attack. And like it mutated when it came into contact with some flu that a member of the Lantry ship had. Mm-hmm. And like that mutated and turned into a disease that attacks other humans and rapidly ages them. And that's what killed the Lantry crew, and that's what's killing everyone at this base. And
then they save her by, what was the word? Trace something. Transporter trace. They were able to get the transporter trace. No, and then they found out she doesn't like transporters. And this was a new character development I did not know about Pulaski, but she doesn't use transporters.
Remember,
apparently.
She's basically a gender swapped McCoy. McCoy doesn't
that
like
was my
beamed.
question. I was going to say, is it really that they were just that lazy? Because I thought McCoy didn't like the transporter either.
Yeah, they were pretty lazy. They were like, let's get McCoy. McCoy is a fun character. Everyone likes McCoy. He was crotchety. We'll have McCoy again. But, you know, McCoy, when he existed, wasn't replacing Dr. Crusher. So, you know, I don't think people were as like, you
right.
know, critical of his character. They have the idea of, well, if we've got a transport pattern of her from before she was infected, we might be able to beam her up and like swap out the DNA in the transport to cure her of the infection.
Which I thought was so clever.
It is clever. It might be the first time they've used the transporter to cure someone in Star Trek. It's not the last time, for sure. But it also, like, we've had our conversations about what are the limits of the transporter and, you know, what can it do? What can't it do? Is there really, like, does it kill you or does it not? Do you really need yourself to be beamed back? If they've got your pattern, you could make a duplicate, maybe. All sorts of fun stuff. But Pulaski has avoided using the transporter the entire time, so the Enterprise doesn't have her pattern on file. And Picard calls her old ship, and they're like, no, she doesn't have... We deleted her pattern when she left, but she almost never used the transporter here either.
We forgot about the cloud between now and then. It's okay.
And but they're like, well, if we can just find a sample of her DNA from before she was infected. And so they go into her quarters and they find a hair follicle on a hairbrush, and they're able to do that, and they beam her back up and reconstitute it. And O'Brien, who gets his name in this episode, it's the first time they say
not only does
O'Brien.
He get his name, he's the dang savior. Like
he delivers like a whole bunch of technobabble. Like, did you notice how much? And like, Data was so impressed with his technobabble, he was like gonna start engaging him in conversation, and Picard's like, Data, that's enough. Shut up.
I'm looking for my notes, but I'm pretty sure my notes. We're having
a moment.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my notes say not only is O'Brien contributing, he's contributing, and he's got good ideas.
And but it's funny because when they're getting ready to do it, because like this is like a, this is either it's going to cure her or we're going to have to scatter her atoms to the cosmos and she dies. And so Picard's like, well, you better let me do it then, O'Brien. And I'm like, Picard, when was the last time you operated a transporter? He's the chief. He's the transporter chief. He's chief of operations there. Let him do his job. He knows what he's doing. He came up with a thing. And actually, I think it probably was just hitting the button to say transport. And because O'Brien is still there, like monitoring all the other stuff, I think he's just like, fine, I'll line everything up. I've got the sighting on the gun correct, and you just have to pull the trigger.
Right.
But yeah, I was just like, no, Picard, what do you mean? Let him do his job. He's been doing his job. He's the savior of the episode. Let him do it.
I know. Give him a minute. Not only is he here, he's saving everybody. I know. I didn't hate this episode as much as you think I might have, because it was a Pulaski centric episode. I was
wondering how you were going to feel about it, because it's a Pulaski episode, but it's also a House MD episode, and you wanted one of those. So we got that, and
I felt like it humanized Pulaski a lot, because she offered to go onto the shuttlecraft with her and Data. And so I was like, okay, so she is so intent on finding out the answer to this or whatever, that she's willing to put her life on the line. That's a very Beverly Crusher thing to do. So I was like, okay, maybe and then she also was some expert that wrote a book. And we've never even heard about this book. We only heard about it because somebody recognized her name and was like, oh, are you Kate Pulaski or whatever?
Well, it's probably something that she did for her doctorate.
Right. And so I don't know. I thought, well, we got way more humanization out of Pulaski this time. And not only it's a huge character development from not even being able to say his name right and being so like mean to Data when she first arrived, to choosing to take him. And I mean, obviously there was a reason she chose to take him, because he probably couldn't get sick. But it also felt like we were actually seeing some actual character development. But then again, she had some really stupid lines and some choices that I did not agree with.
How did you feel about the old age makeup? Because we've had another episode. We had Too Short a Season in season 1, where there was the guy who was reverse Benjamin Buttoning. So they started out with really crappy old man makeup, and then he turned out like, I think the actor was in his 20s.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't reverse Benjamin Buttoning. He was just Benjamin Buttoning, right? Because he was going backwards. Right. Yeah.
Look, I haven't seen it, so
anyway. I think I saw it once when it came out.
Yeah. How do you think they did? How good of a job do you think they did with Pulaski?
I did not like it. I don't know. I felt like it was just taking the parts of her face that were already old and accentuating them. But I don't know.
That's actually interesting, because that's kind of what they did. And I was reading up about the makeup that they did for this, and they said they weren't satisfied with what they had done with old makeup in Too Short a Season. Nobody was. That looked awful.
It looked so bad. I mean, it was better than Too Short a Season. That's for sure.
But they said the fact that Diana Muldaur was a more mature woman. I think she was in her 40s when she was in TNG. So she already had some signs of aging that they were able to use as anchor points to like, okay, here's how you're going to look when you're like 80 or whatnot.
Well, and with Benjamin Button, what was his name? I can't remember. But in Too Short a Season...
Oh, no, the other guy.
The other guy, yeah. The Too Short a Season guy. Yeah. When we start with the bad makeup with him, and it's obviously bad makeup. So it's kind of like, what's going on with this person? And, to be honest, I was writing notes and looked up, and I was like, oh, I see she's aging, And I think it threw me off guard. Yeah,
Like,
the hair got gray, right?
They might have given her a couple wrinkles, but at first it was just, okay, let's just put her in a wig that's got some gray hairs in it or something. Or
yeah, my biggest problem with this episode was that it was about growing old faster, and one of the oldest members of the crew went to go take care of it. It should have been a Wesley episode because he would have had more time to grow old. Like, even if it was a matter of a couple of hours, he would have had more time.
If they sent Wesley down, do you think they would have got the guy that Q turned Wesley into in season 1?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about him. Yeah, they could have just brought him back. See, we need to be on the TNG writers,
Well, unfortunately, the show's been over for about 30 years, so I think we missed the boat on that one.
Well, when time travel happens. We can go back in time.
You're not too far off though, because Mike McMahon, who is the executive producer for Star Trek Lower Decks, he got his start in Star Trek by writing the Star Trek: The Next Generation Season 8 Twitter account, in which he would write humorous plot synopses of a theoretical 8th season of TNG.
Oh, interesting.
And I think and he published a bunch of those tweets into a book. And then I think he met with Alex Kurtzman at like a party or something like that, where he's like, oh yeah, I'm the TNG season 8 guy. And then he was just like, if I were to get to make a Star Trek show, here's my idea for it. And like, he was just there like having conversation, and then left the conversation going, oh my God, I'm going to make a Star Trek show. So,
that is so cool. Yeah.
You never know.
Well, that's the watch. We'll end up making our own Star Trek show.
Of course, Mike McMahon, it's not like Lower Decks was his first thing ever. He worked on Rick and Morty as well. So, he's...
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, he's got experience in TV, but specifically his in with Star Trek was the Twitter account. So back to Unnatural Selection. Did you notice how they mention in just one sentence that, oh yeah, they cured everyone who was on the base, but we never see any of them restored to a younger state? And if you... Because
they were just old people. Yeah.
If you turned away for 5 seconds, you would have missed that. And you're like, well, screw everyone on the planet, then I guess Pulaski's the only one who gets to be okay, and those kids are just gonna live isolated and alone with all the adults dead.
Yeah, that's true.
and I think they had planned to have a younger version of the old lady who was the lead scientist there. I think they were going to have a young actress play her as a cured version, but they cut it for time, or they just never filmed the scene. But it feels like by losing that,
I can imagine exactly what she'd look like.
It's it really I actually completely forgot that they cured them. Only when I went back and was reading it on Memory Alpha did I realize, oh wait, no, I guess they did say that they cured everyone else, but I totally missed it. I'm sure a lot of people missed it. So it just feels like the solution to the episode was Dr. Pulaski cures herself after she gets infected, which isn't a satisfying a story.
No,
if the doctor is trying to cure everyone and then only ends up curing themselves, and everyone else dies, okay, that you're kind of a shit doctor, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like they should have had that payoff. You should have been able okay, we're cured, and while we're down here, we'll keep the kids isolated from us until we find a way to permanently fix this issue with their immune system. And, then that would be just... 20 seconds. You could do that in a 20 seconds.
Yeah, because when you started saying this, I was like, wait, did I even track that they had cured those people? I don't think I had, because you started saying it and I was like, oh yeah, the people on the planet also had it. I forgot about that. Oh, so you want to this episode included one of the stupidest lines ever written for Data so far.
Okay.
And that is when he is watching Pulaski excitedly talk to the boy when they take him out of the plastic wrap. And she's like, yes, I understand you. And Data says, how can you understand him? And that is the dumbest Data line of all time, because he knows Deanna Troi. What in the hell is that line?
This is Star Trek. Vulcans are a founding member of the Federation, and they are a telepathic species. He should know about telepathy.
He knows about telepathy. There's so many telepathic races.
He's probably incapable of being read by telepaths or communicating telepathically with other telepaths.
He met Deanna's mom.
But, he knows. Yeah.
It was such a stupid line. I was like, what the hell?
He's smart. He should know, oh, you've got telepathic abilities. That's interesting.
Right. And so I really thought that in the end, it was going to have to be Data that saved Pulaski because she's been such a dick to him this whole time.
Well, that would be a good story beat. Yeah. If she
but
has
it gave
to grudgingly
O'Brien his
accept
first. Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
But it gave O'Brien his moment in the sun, and I'm all happy for that. So, I want to talk about the chess. Is that a Star Trek specific chess with the
3D chess? Yes, that is. Yeah, the 3D chess set. Actually, we haven't seen it yet in 10 Forward, but they'll have one in 10 Forward that they play all the time. But yeah, no, in the original series, Spock and Kirk were playing 3D chess all the time. And Kirk usually beat Spock, which, would always irk Spock because Spock is the logical one with the super brain, but Kirk was still able to beat him at chess, which is very silly considering that now that we've got supercomputers that are unbeatable at chess, but they were playing it like, oh, chess is not just a game of, the right move. It's a game of guile and
but
all this.
It is a game of right moves. Yeah, the only thing you're not outwitting anybody when you do things in chess. There's no poker face. There's no pretend you don't have a move set up or whatever. Unless you're doing that thing that you were taught in third grade where you move the two pieces and checkmate the person and they're not aware of it, the blitzkrieg or whatever they call it.
There is, I don't remember what season it is, but there is an episode where Deanna beats Data at chess, and it was the stupidest thing ever. And it was just you didn't feel the game. And I'm like, what the are you talking about, Deanna?
Chess. There's nothing about chess you feel. That is so stupid. So are there rules to 3D chess? Can we make a 3D chessboard and play it against each other?
I've looked at it. I'm sure there are you can actually
some
buy
nerd out
official.
There has made rules.
Yeah. I think usually on the show when they're playing it, I think they really just because if you look at it top down, it is just like an 8x8 grid, but different sections are just kind of offset. So I think on the show they just kind of play it like it's normal chess, except they have to move pieces from different platforms when they're making moves. But I think there are official rules for 3D chess that do more than that. I just haven't bothered to look because I don't know. I don't play chess that much, so
I don't either. Yeah, but I saw it and I was like, ooh, I wonder if there's rules. The one last thing I want to say before we move to the next episode is this episode had not only had that line, but Pulaski had a really stupid line, which was he's so dedicated to this ship, he's not able to step back and see the human equation, which is the most unobservant thing. I was like, if she's such a good doctor and so good at noticing things and so able to pick up on little nuances and stuff, why in the world would she not understand that Jean-Luc is able to see the human equation? And even Deanna laughed at her when she said that. I was like, so I don't know. I felt like it was bad writing because if she's supposed to be this excellent doctor, she wouldn't make stupid observations like that.
Well, she's new.
She is new, but she's supposed to be good at her job. So next we're going to talk about A Matter of Honor, which is the 8th episode of the 2nd season. It aired on the 6th of February, 1989. It was written by Burton Armus. The story is by Wanda M. Hite, Gregory Amos, and Burton Armus, and was directed by Rob Bowman.
So I have a feeling we're probably going to fight over this episode because you texted me before we started and you said that it was another bad episode written by Armus, and I love this episode.
So I loved the episode by the end.
Okay.
When I texted you, I was only halfway through the episode.
Okay.
And so by the end, I was smiling and enjoying it. And I really did enjoy the episode toward the end, but I did not like the way it was set up at all.
Okay. So let's talk.
Yeah.
The Enterprise gets some crew transfer, and there's one guy who is there's a Benzite who joins the crew as part of the officer exchange program, and it's the same actor who was in the episode where Wesley applied for the Academy, and Wesley actually sees him and is like, oh hey, aren't you Murdoch? And he's like, well no, I'm not Murdoch, I'm Mendon. But it is in fact the same actor. I think they brought him back because
and was it the same suit, the same face and everything?
Yeah, I assume that's why they brought him back, because they already had his face molded and they had the makeup designed around his head. So they're like, well, we'll just bring him back and then we'll make a mention of like, oh, we're from the same geostructure, so that's why we look alike.
But then he acted so sketchy the whole time. I thought there was going to be something with that. They need to stop setting these things up for me, because then I spend the whole time like, oh, okay, he's going to be this or that or whatever.
Well, it sounds like you missed the point.
Was racism? Because it
sounds like you missed the point. The point is...
I didn't miss the point, but the point was you mistook me for my brother. We look alike. And then Wesley makes some sort of comment about, oh, how do you tell each other apart? There was little subtle references like that throughout. But also
the fact that you're saying that he's sketchy, he's not sketchy. He's from a different culture. And
no, we're going to talk about that. You want to talk about it now? Okay, we can talk about it now. Yeah. If he went to Starfleet Academy and he doesn't know how to act on a Starfleet ship, bullshit. Like, I was like, what is going on here? Because even Wesley says you couldn't have finished Starfleet Academy this quickly. And he says, oh, I'm not Mordock. I'm Menden. I think that was his name. Menden.
So I don't actually think he went to Starfleet Academy, because Wesley was thinking of Mordock, who did apply for Starfleet Academy. But Menden is a member of the officer exchange program. So But
he's wearing a Starfleet uniform with a thing.
Yeah, he is. I assume that's just they gave him that uniform because he was joining the thing. It's a little weird that they, as we're going to talk about when Riker enters the program, why he doesn't get a Klingon officer uniform, but whatever. No, the point is that he is not. But
you can see why this was confusing to me. The whole time I'm like, if he went to Starfleet Academy, how does he not know how to act on the dang Enterprise?
No, he did not.
And if they didn't give him any sort of orientation, why would they just let him have access to the ship? They did give him one.
They did give him, because they said he had to go through an indoctrination course. They specifically said the word indoctrination, which is like, that's a weird...
Indoctrination, I know. It's a weird word.
They even mentioned, I guess our indoctrination course needs to be buffed up a little if you misunderstood how things operate on the ship. But
well, they did a terrible job of explaining this exchange system, because the whole time I was wondering, how long is Riker gone for? Is he gone for years? Like, how long is this program? And I mean, especially because some of the people stepped off the platform and were like, all right, you're here as replacements, and they just left. And then the Benzite guy, they're like, all right, you're part of the exchange program. And then Wesley even mentioned Starfleet Academy. So it just, to me, it felt like it was a bunch of Starfleet people.
I assume most of them were Starfleet. I think Menden was probably the only member of the officer exchange program that was joining the ship.
Okay. It was weird. It was a weird setup, because I had a hard time understanding.
Because Menden comes on and like Riker and Picard are talking about the officer exchange program, Picard has the idea. He's like, we're set to rendezvous with a Klingon ship soon. And
he doesn't just have this idea sitting around in his room, though. He has this idea while they're playing laser tag in there, or whatever you want to call it. In the holodeck. Yeah.
No, it wasn't the holodeck. It was the phaser range.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought it was a holodeck. Okay.
It would have made more sense to be a holodeck, because they're in this big, massive, empty void where I'm like, where do they have room for this on the ship?
Yeah, that's why I assumed it was the holo.
In Star Trek Discovery, this isn't really a spoiler. It's just a weird special effect thing, but like every time we see like the turbolift on Discovery, where like we would see exterior shots of the turbolift as it's moving through the ship, but it's weird because like looking outside of the turbolift, it's like there's this massive void where the turbolift is moving through, and I'm like, where in the ship do you have room for this massive void that the turbolift's moving through? Shouldn't it just be a tunnel? The turbolift itself was just like flying around and everything, so that it could just move from like, you know, terminal to terminal without having to be like on rails or something. But I'm like, where's the room on the ship for that? Anyway. That's what I was thinking when I saw the phaser range. It would make far more sense if they were just using the holodeck with like holographic phasers that, you know, have accurate.
That's what I thought they were doing. I thought they were just like, let's go have some phaser shooting in the holodeck. Oh, and while we're here, I'm going to make some tongue-in-cheek jokes about how you should join the Klingons. But is this a good time to ask why in the heck they didn't send Worf?
Well, because Worf already knows Klingon culture. The whole point of the officer exchange
but he's never gotten to experience it. he knows it, but
Maybe.
he's never gotten to experience it. It felt like they were taking that away from him. Like he could have gone and experienced it.
Picard specifically talks about how there's a little that they know about the Klingons, and it would be good for their officers to spend time on Klingon ships to have a better cultural understanding. And Worf may be an outsider to the Klingons, but he spent his entire life engrossed in studying Klingon culture.
It felt kind of bad for him.
Well, he probably wanted to go too.
I think that was pretty obvious. There was a couple little side remarks that I thought, oh, his feelings are hurt. Yeah.
Actually, I love the preparation that Riker gets into for preparing to go serve on this Klingon ship, and Worf explains to him that it's the duty of the first officer to assassinate the captain when they are weak or feeble or incapable of making decisions, and it's also the job of
is it incapable of making decisions? There was a specific word that he used that made it very clear. I'm looking to see if I wrote it down. That I thought was interesting, that it was impaired to do their duties or something like that. That I thought was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. So Riker's like, hope I don't have to kill anyone, but okay. And then Riker also, because he knows he's going to serve on a Klingon ship, he's like, well, I better sample the cuisine so I know what's good. And so he's just in 10 forward, and he just has this massive feast of Klingon dishes that are brought to his table, and everyone is looking at them and gagging, and I'm just like, I don't know, most of this looks good to me. It looks a little weird.
It didn't look terrible. Yeah, I know. Pulaski, of course, was there to be a jerk about it.
And when I looked up what they used for most of the food, they got most of the food was just like they would use food coloring to change it up, but the vast majority of what they used, they just got at an Asian food market. And so that's kind of unintentionally racist to be like, oh, gross. Look at what the Asians are eating.
But I thought that was another one of those, and I'm assuming it was on purpose, but it was another one of those subtle nods to what it's like to be a different culture and how people talk about your food. That's what clearly Mendon was supposed to be, except for that they set him up to be kind of sketchy for me. But it was supposed to be when you go somewhere and you're trying to follow your own rules. He reminded me, Mendon in particular, and this comes back to Riker, but Mendon in particular reminded me of that person that starts at your work and they think they know everything because they've worked in similar jobs before, and they're
so obnoxious. Yeah, I've known that
around
person.
your office, change everything, and you're like, dude, it works this way because we set it up this way. It reminded me of that guy. Like Nathaniel in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Of course, he bought the company, but I was singing "Who's the New Guy" in the back of my head the whole time. But I really by the end of it, I was really I had a lot of compassion for Mendon once I realized he wasn't being sketchy. He was being a Benzite. And so then Riker's kind of doing that same thing too. He's trying to embrace the culture while all the white people gather around and talk about how weird the food looks, I
kind of wish that Worf was joining him in 10 forward and enjoying all the food. He's like, oh man, I haven't had the replicator never makes this right. I'm glad they made it in the kitchen out back or something like that. This is great. Or Worf could have been like, oh no, this gawk is no good. It's dead. You got to have live gawk, otherwise you're gonna miss the experiments. Because Riker didn't know until he goes onto the ship that gawk is supposed to be eaten live.
Right, and let's talk about some of that character development, because remember when he had to pretend to be infected with the little alien dudes, he refused to eat the mealworms. That was when he broke character and started shooting everybody because he didn't want to put the mealworms in his mouth.
Right.
And so he had serious character development when he gets to the Klingon ship and he's eating all this food that he's feasted on. Then they're like, well, they bring him the gawk and it's all live worms instead of the dead worms he had been eating. And he looks at it and I'm like, oh no, is Riker going to eat those? He didn't eat the mealworms before. And he did it,
What I loved was what's the name of the second officer, the guy who he kicks the ass of like 5 minutes into joining the ship because the guy's just starts.
My notes say Riker's gonna fight the number 2.
Yeah, like you can tell it's broadcast so much because he like just immediately challenges Riker's authorities. Like, you're not the Klingon, you don't know what it's like to be here. You're just a weak human. Why should I listen to you? And Riker,
and then he wharfed him.
Riker throws his face like through a computer console, and I'm just like, that dude should be dead. Like, you should have broken his neck doing that. But I remember the first time I saw that episode, I was just cheering, like, yeah, kick his ass, get him.
How about the fact that they're all sitting around gathering or eating their food, and there's a lady Klingon, and he's like, my notes are like, oh, Riker is eyeing the first woman Klingon he found, and then she's eyeing him too.
There's 2 women, both giving him googly eyes.
That's right, there was a second one, but that first one really, and then he makes a joke that he could take both of them or something,
yeah.
and then they're like, and then I was like, oh, the Klingons aren't down with threesome.
But like, no, she's just like, she's wondering if you could handle her. It's like, and Riker goes, one or both, and then she's just like, she like smiles and she's like, I will have you, and then she gets up and walks, and then he just like, Riker just whispers to his, like, he's like, she's serious? And he's like, yes. And Riker's just like, oh shit. And it's like the first time I've seen Riker go, I don't want to have sex this time.
Yeah, but I bet he did.
He might not have.
I've at least been curious,
if I were Riker, I'd be like, look, it's the experience. When in Rome, you have sex with a Klingon.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah, and I had actually thought about that before he went up there. I was like, I wonder how Riker's going to be around Lady Klingons if they are on that ship,
Uh-huh.
So the moment when I don't know what the number 2's name was, but when he turns to Riker and he's like, are you a typical Federation officer? It had serious, like, I'm above average Steve Trevor lines from when Diana sees Steve Trevor's junk for the first time. And I was like, oh, that's funny.
It was Clag was his name.
Clag. Yes, yeah. That was his name.
Did you recognize that actor? He's been in a bunch of things.
No.
He was one of the punks that the Terminator killed in the first Terminator movie to get his clothes.
And not Bill Paxton?
Yeah. Not Bill Paxton, but it was one of the other guys, yeah. He's got a very recognizable mouth. Like,
oh, I'll have to pay. I could go back and look. Yeah. But that's interesting. No, I did not recognize him. I did think that in the end, when it ends up being Riker that defeats the captain of the ship, I did think it was going to be him.
Uh-huh.
Because of, the number 2 or the number 1 takes out the captain or whatever. And I thought, oh, it's going to be set up that Riker had his respect by the end of the episode because he did kick his ass and he had been respectful about the food. And they loved that he had a sense of humor, which I thought was funny because
yes,
I was like so excited about that whole scene. Like when they're like, ha ha, threesomes, but they were laughing,
And they're like, well, I didn't think Federations had a sense of humor. And Riker's just like, I didn't think Klingons had a sense of humor because the only Klingon Riker's ever served with is Worf, who's like never laughed a day in his life.
When they said that, I was trying to remember if he's even ever cracked a smile that I've seen.
No, not yet. Worf does smile at some points in the show, and it's always played up like as a funny thing, like, oh God, don't smile. That's not you.
So we kind of got off track with the plot, but at this point, the Enterprise has suddenly realized that there is some sort of foreign tiny substance.
There's a microbe that's like eating first they discovered it on themselves. There's a microbe eating away at the whole of the Enterprise. They're able to clear it, but then Mendon is like, oh yes, I noticed it. It came from the Klingon ship. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell us about it? And he's like, I hadn't finished my report yet. It would be improper to report it.
I totally thought he was going to say, I tried to tell Captain Picard about some things and he told me to F off. So I thought that was going to be why.
No, he should have told Worf, and Worf would have brought it to the captain's attention. He just didn't tell anyone because he hadn't finished his thing.
Because he hadn't finished it, which I thought was really interesting, because that's when you suddenly realize, oh, he's not being a jerk because is better than everybody. He's being a jerk. It's like he's projecting confidence. He wants to be here and he's trying to look like he has a good, and anytime anyone specifically says I requested to be put on the Enterprise, I assume they're there for nefarious purposes. So that might be another reason that he came off sketchy to me. But
keep in mind, the Enterprise is the flagship of the Federation. It is like the primo assignment in Starfleet. People request to be on the Enterprise because it is one of the best job assignments you can get in Starfleet. So not everyone who wants to be on the Enterprise is doing so for nefarious purposes. Sometimes it's just because it's a very prestigious job to get.
Okay, that makes sense. So I really liked this moment because even at that moment I did the this is all cultural, like this is the way that we assume everybody in America is going to do things the way that we do things in America, and then we don't understand when it's just not inherent to other people, and so I really liked that moment. And then they're like, well, we need to contact the Klingons and tell them because we need to help them. And they're like, okay, let's go find the Klingons. And then it changes over to the Klingons. And the Klingons have also discovered the whole breach where the little things are eating through it. But they also can tell that Mr. Benzite had run the laser probe.
He'd run a detailed scan on that specific section of the ship, and so they think that it's actually an attack by the Enterprise. They think the Enterprise put it on there rather than just doing a sensor sweep. And Riker's like trying to vouch for the Enterprise, and he's like, "No, that's not how we operate. We would never do that. I don't know why they didn't alert you of it, but maybe their results weren't conclusive or something like that." But then the captain is like, challenging Riker, and he's just like, look, we're going into battle against the Enterprise. You're going to tell us all of its secrets. And Riker's like, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, you are disobeying an order. He's like, no, I am not disobeying an order. If we go into battle, I will do my job and I will help you fight the Enterprise, but I will not give away Federation secrets. And the captain's like, good, I would have killed you if you had done that.
I know. So do they not have email?
Well, no, they tried to hail them.
Okay, but they can't hail Riker specifically?
You would think so, but no.
He is a communicator, right?
Yeah, the show can be inconsistent about the range of those communicators. I think in some shows, like on Picard, like that communicator can go through subspace and across systems, but usually like just the one that's just on your shirt, that one is only like has a range of like orbit.
Okay.
So they're trying to hail the ship, but the ship is doing it's cloaked doing maneuvers in some other sections. So they're like, well, we kind of know where they are, but they're not responding to hails. Let's just head over to where we think they are. And but then the Klingons are like, see, they're coming, they're following us. And it's just a total misunderstanding. Riker's trying to clear it up, but eventually Riker realizes, okay, the captain is going to attack the Enterprise unless I do something about it. And Worf had given him actually an emergency transponder, just in case, because Worf is just like, look, I know how Klingon ships can get. You're probably going to get killed over there. Here, take this, and if you hit it, and then we'll come and rescue you. But so he activates it, but he deliberately activates it in sight of the captain. And the captain's like, what's that? Give that to me. And
it was a very smart moment. Yeah.
And the Enterprise is like, oh, we've got the beacon activated for Riker. Lock onto him and beam him directly to the bridge. I want to know what's going on. But because it's the transponder, they beam over the captain. With the Klingon captain not on the ship, Riker is now in command of the ship. And
it leads to some of my favorite moments in all of TNG at this point, when he's like, I'm Captain William Riker. I was like, oh my God, I know. And then I can't remember the exact line. It was just like, here it is. I wrote it down. I order you to lower your shields and surrender. I was like, oh my God, this is so good.
And of course, Picard's like, yeah, I'm going to, I know Riker's up to something, but like, I trust him. Yeah, of course I'm going to surrender to Riker.
Right. And then he cannot say Captain Riker without getting like a twinkle in his eye either. Yeah, I know.
He wants him to be captain one day. So like, yeah, he's got some pride for him, and he knows Riker's doing a good job.
Yeah, but, I know.
Once the Klingon captain has been, taken out of the equation, they're able to, resolve everything. It's like, okay, it was a misunderstanding. We just didn't communicate properly. Here we are. We figured out how to cure it. So we're going to go ahead and patch up your hole for you. Then they go on their way.
Yeah. And I thought it was a really interesting Riker episode. I thought that it was some great development on Riker's part. There was a lot of like tricksiness that I enjoyed, like the thing with the beacon. Like he was like, "What is that?" And he knew the captain, was going to ask for it. He knew that he was going to ask him to hand it, and he needed to get him off of the ship, so he became first in command. I was concerned that number 2 was going to try to attack Riker at that point, because he was the captain and he was doing things in more of a human subversive way than Klingons would normally do it. Tricking the captain off of the ship and stuff, instead of like killing him like a good Klingon,
I think the fact that Riker had already kicked his ass and like had earned his respect. So I think he was probably a little more amenable to seeing Riker's way of doing things and trusting that Riker was not betraying the Klingons.
Right. The trust there was really good, right? I really loved that trust between the number 2 and Riker, even
they
before
spent the whole
captain
episode building
off.
that, so that you kind of need, because it is his job to kill Riker. If he suspects Riker is, unfit to command. So they had to spend the whole episode building it up so that you believe it when he doesn't kill Riker in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And I really thought it was good. I liked it. I mean, like I said, I had a hard time getting into it, because I had all these questions about the Benzite and like why he was there, how long this exchange program between the officers was going to last, like why there was
going to last to the end of the episode.
And I was like, it has to be, because this is going to be a 1 episode thing that gets wrapped up, how come all the people who came over, including the Benzite, were in blue though? Isn't that medical?
It's medical or science.
Or science, so it can be science too.
Yeah.
Okay. He may be a spy, but he is no coward, was a really good line.
Actually, I really liked a lot of the scenes in the mess hall, in the Klingon mess hall. For starters, when Clag was like seeing Riker's reticence at eating live gawk, he's just like, "Oh, if this food isn't to your liking, perhaps we could have one of the females breastfeed you."
I know. And they had a big laugh about that, and I thought that was funny.
But also the conversation about when Clag tells Riker, "Look around you. There are no old Klingon officers because they all die in battle." But then he talks about his father, how his father
daddy issues. Yeah,
his father had been captured by Romulans and not permitted to die a glorious death in battle, and so now his father is just living on the Klingon homeworld, waiting to die, an old man with no honor. And he's like, "I will not talk to him." And Riker's like, "But he's your father." And he's like, "Nope, it's the way. It's he has no honor. I will not speak to him." And considering later this season, we're going to see that Riker hasn't talked to his dad in some time either. So it's a little funny for Riker to be like, "How can you not talk to your father?" I don't know, Riker. How can you not talk to your father?
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay.
So keep that in mind, because that's, I think, coming up in like 6 or 7 episodes.
I thought it was interesting because, it reminded me of how I'll go, like when I used to date before I was married and stuff, like I'd ask people about their lives and their families, what's your relationship with your parents like? And I've had people say, people don't usually ask me these questions. And it's always, to me, it's baffling, because I want to know about people. And for me, that's going to be like one of the number one ways, like, what's your parents like? Whether it like helps me give a little bit of like structure to who they are as a person. So I thought it was interesting that was where, as a human, he went when talking to Klingons was, "Well, tell me about your family," and then he said, "We have no what did he say? There's a really good line. I don't remember if I wrote it down, but something like, "You have your ship, you don't need a family," or something like that. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting. I really liked seeing the different dynamics, because like Klingon aggression is not something that I relate to, right? Like, I don't relate to wanting to kill people and only seeing honor in dying on the battlefield and stuff. This is not something I relate to, but I like seeing the perspective of someone else through, a human's eyes, and vice versa, the humans through the Klingons' eyes. I think it's really interesting.
And I love just the continual building up of Klingon culture throughout the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. There's a reason that Klingons are so popular in Star Trek fandom, and it's because the writers really put in the work to make them feel like a fully fleshed out culture.
They eat their pets, though.
Yeah.
That was one of those culture things, though. Like, for us, we would never eat our pets. But I'm a vegetarian, and I've never really understood why people differentiate between dog meat and cow meat. I don't really understand the difference. To me, they're both animals. But when they said heart of Targ, I was like, wait, isn't that their animal?
Well, keep in mind, people keep pigs as pets sometimes, right?
That's true, and they still eat pigs.
A Targ is a boar. It's just an alien boar. So I assume there's Targ that are raised as pets, and there are Targ that are raised as livestock.
That makes sense too. Or even you could live on a farm and have, a Targ that you like.
Yeah,
and then I wonder if there's a Klingon version of Charlotte's Web. With like a Targ and some sort of alien spider. I don't know. This is the fan fiction I'm going to end up writing.
There is a stuffed animal version of a Targ called Toby the Targ. And
I feel like you mentioned this before. How do I get a Toby?
You could probably find, I'm sure somebody's made one on Etsy, but B'Elanna Torres had a Toby the Targ as a kid. And
who is she?
She's on Voyager. She's the half Klingon engineer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would make sense that she'd have a Targ toy because she's half Klingon. So I don't know. It's one of those things. But yeah, it especially for Klingons, it would make sense. You probably actually, when your Targ dies, you would probably eat its heart to honor it, I would think. That feels like a Klingon thing.
Actually, yeah. To honor your pet that way.
Especially if it because they're boars, so I'm sure they they go into battle with their Klingons because with tusks and everything, boars can do a lot of damage. So like if your Targ died in glorious combat by your side, of course you're going to eat its heart to honor its sacrifice and honor its glorious death in battle and to gain its power. Maybe there's a lot of cultures in which eating the heart of something is to gain its power. So that seems like something that might be in Klingon culture.
Yeah, that would make sense. I will say I was kind of hoping that at some point we would get to see Riker do the yell, the meeting death, warning the death that they're coming yell. You know what I mean? From the other episode.
That'd be so cool.
I know.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if we've ever seen a non-Klingon do the death howl. And
howl. That's the word I was looking for.
Because we see the death howl later. I think we see it in Deep Space Nine. Worf does it, but I don't think we see anyone not a Klingon do it.
Okay, so I have a question for you that came up for me during the episode. Are all Klingons black? I'm having a hard time remembering if I've ever seen any non-black Klingons.
So no, actually most of the Klingons in this episode were white actors. But that's an interesting question because, especially like in the original series, before they had the bumpy foreheads, they all still were like, their makeup was very swarthy and they just kind of had like a Mid-Eastern Indian look to them. Which of course is, you look at it now and it's like, well, that's a bunch of white actors that were doing that. That's a little,
right.
But here they still give them darker skin for the most part, so I can understand why you would think they're black. And Michael Dorn is black. I thought
they were black actors, yeah. And then I guess probably because of Worf, in my mind I was like, oh, okay, so are all Klingons black people? I wasn't sure.
That's actually, I think I probably had that thought myself as a kid. But no, most of the Klingon actors that you see are white actors.
But they always kind of have some sort of tone to their skin, right?
Yeah. And actually,
so is it blackface?
That's kind of, yeah. It is an interesting question. And actually, I've seen stuff where like some of the Klingon actors from Deep Space Nine they would like when they go into makeup for like conventions and stuff, that more recently they've like stopped darkening their skin for it. They just use their natural skin tone, but with the Klingon makeup, and having the bumps and everything still match their skin tone instead of darkening it to go with it. So I think there's probably some unfortunate implications with the makeup, and especially with the original series makeup. Just look at it and you're like, yeah, that's a little racist. And I almost wonder if that's why in Star Trek Discovery, when they did the Klingon redesign, if they gave them like non-human skin tones. I didn't like the redesign in Discovery. There's parts of it that I think are good, but in particular, they got rid of the hair, which makes no sense to me. Klingon hair is a very important part of their culture.
What do you mean got rid of the hair? Like they just don't have hair?
They don't have hair. At least in the first season. In the second season, they gave them the hair back because they realized that was a big mistake.
Because they were like, oh, no.
But their skin tones, they had far more, like, it almost feels like they lost the color from it, and they're all just shades of, like shades of gray. That looked pretty flat, that I didn't really like. But at least it wasn't like, okay, well, you've got a human skin tone, but you're only black.
Right.
So,
it's interesting because blackface is usually intentional, right? Yes. Like you're intentionally trying to mimic a black person, and usually for laughs. And that's why it's so problematic, right? Is because you're using people of color as a punchline. But I don't know that was necessarily the intention here. But I'm curious. I'd be curious to know.
There's a lot of like Mongolian influence in Klingon design. And it's like, again, going back to the original series, if you look at how they are presented in the original series, they kind of look like white actors who were painted to look Mongolian.
That makes sense. Kind of like Genghis Khan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I was just thought it was interesting and to bring it up. And I mean, I think having these conversations, it's interesting that they redesign them. I mean, everybody's always evolving. Star Trek is about diversity and including everyone. So it's, I think it's important to have these conversations. And I think it's important to potentially look back and say, oh, that was problematic. I mean, we talked about that in the last episode with the title, The Schizoid Man, right? Like we don't use that term anymore, And
it wasn't even an accurate title because like what the best description for what it was like DID,
right? Not schizophrenia.
Yeah. But anyway, actually have been thinking about doing a YouTube video all about the different Klingon designs throughout the history of Star Trek.
Oh yeah, that would be really interesting.
Because even though there have been like 3 major periods of Klingon design, even within that, there have been changes here and there, and it would be interesting to look at the influences, what worked, what didn't. So it's been one of the video ideas I've had in the back of my mind that I think.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I like it. I mean, the Klingons, like you said, there's so much culture, and they span all of the series, right? So it's you get they are one of the most prominent non-human races in the entire show, which makes these Klingon episodes so interesting. And like I really thought by the end of it, I mean, Riker really got to save the day, and he did it smart, and he did it in a way that nobody died, and I really liked the episode by the end.
Well, I'm glad because I was worried when you said you didn't like it. I'm like, oh no.
I thought it was a really weird setup. That first half of the episode, I did not know what was going on, but by the end, I was in.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thanks. So I think that's it. Yeah. So thanks for joining us today. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at Rest Both Worlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.